Many of you, like you and all of you know that I'm infamous for handouts. This is not a handout. However, it does have a quote from one of my favorite writers who I refer to constantly in our workshops, Annie Dillard. I thought this was so appropriate to this occasion of graduating with creative work and going out into the world. The writer is interested in knowing the world in order to make real and honest sense of it. He explores the world, probes it. He collects the world, collates it. No part of it is outside of his field. As a writer begins a new work, his potential field is the whole world. Any finished piece of writing is then a small wedge of that world, and that wedge may include anything: philology, genocide, childbirth, naval architecture, microphysics, love, loss, beauty, barrenness, vision, consequences of detachment. His interest in the world is genuine. It is not only that he plans to use these bits in the world in his work, he plans to learn them all and then to understand them. I give you this evening three writers who have, in my experience of them in the last 2 years, well entered the world of the word and mind and vision. They have translated what they witnessed into stories and poems on a variety of subjects. I've read work about a high school football star who plays the cello in secret. I've read work about sword swallowers and talking heads of Jesus. I've read stories about television comedians and gangster panda bears. I've read stories about obstinate old men, about Hooters girls, waitresses, and nudist camps. But more importantly, I've read work that has matured from classroom exercises about plot or character to serious considerations, meditations even, about why we write stories and why we need them. And I'd like to just read a few quotes for you from some of these writers from last semester as they addressed why they write. One person says, "My writing is really starting to have a life. It's growing up and experiencing." Another says, "I've come to realize that writing is a matter of finding one's voice and learning to be comfortable with that voice and with seeing how that voice will change over time." And lastly, "As a writer, I attempt to find purity in the supposedly unclean and beauty in the shameful. I struggle to let my words live because they are what push strongest against the confines of my heart." This evening, these writers are on the eve of graduation and at the doorstep of the world. I'm genuinely fortunate to have known all of them in my workshops over the last 2 years, and I will miss all of them greatly. And I'm so happy to see them go forward with their individual appreciation of the creative act. They're just beginning, as Annie Dillard says, to know the world and to make real and genuine sense of it. The first writer this evening, in her own words, is up to grade. Leah is an anthropology major with minors in writing and film studies. She's from Charleston, South Carolina, where her family still lives. Her parents, Doug, and I know you'll want to put that together with her last name.
Doug up to grade.
Yes. Get that, Doug, up to club. And Nancy have a small farm outside the city, complete with horses, goats, pig, parrots, dogs, and cats. She has a sister, Sarah, and a brother, Chris. Leah came to Berry to play soccer and majored in environmental science. She stayed with soccer all 4 years, but quickly changed majors like most college students. Her environmental interests are now expressed through the student environmental group SAVE, which she's co-president. She did not begin writing seriously until an introduction to fiction class, after being given tools to express herself. Her enthusiasm for writing grew.
I'm going to put this drink here, but I'm really afraid I'm
Don't do it.
Okay. Thanks for coming very much. And I'd especially like to thank my friends and family for this corner, and my parents who just drove up from South Carolina today to be here. So I should speak about just for all the help. Seeing people's reactions to your work is really important to me, and like my process of writing. So with that, I think I'll get on with it. Approaching ambulance is going to be the first thing I read, which is again this has become like my standard thing to send out to everything. Because it's the only one that I like that I've written so far. So I think I do this. Approaching ambulance, and there's nowhere to go on this two-lane road. Flashing lights get closer and I brake, only to speed the approach. So I punch the gas and you hold on tighter. The siren goes louder and I try to keep control. I am held in by the steep embankments of your arms. Finally you yell, stop. But oh baby, I can't, I need you. You say stop, once again. And oh baby, I would if I could. Next, I'll read a portion of, I knew everybody would probably maybe want me to read this story, except like the people who've read it too many times already, which is the nudist colony story, which seems to, yeah, the whole thing's in there, so I will just kind of give you an introduction for, because I'm going to be reading the end of it. So this character, Will, goes to a nudist colony, to the chagrin of his best friend, Claire. Despite Will's best efforts to fit in at the nudist colony, he keeps getting aroused, and which is a big no-no at a nudist colony. So he gets reprimanded by Randy, which is the colony manager, and very fictional. But this scene kind of comes in after he's been grounded for a night, sent to his room, and to think about his actions, I guess, or something. So the next morning, I wait to see the flashing lights still there. I try to ignore it as I open the blinds and see the snow-covered brownie spruces. I even manage to ignore it while I brush my teeth, but my curiosity wins over and I finally check the message. It's Claire. Hey Will, I hope you're having fun up there with all those naked people. Just like Claire. Anyway, you still have plenty of time to come to your senses and come back to Boston to spend Christmas with your best friend. Okay, Bob. I put the phone down and hear a knock at the door. Will, it's Randy. I open the door and let him in. How are you feeling today, Will? Randy asked while looking around my room, looking for dirty magazines or some sign of immorality, I'm sure. I feel fine, I say, so what's the deal? Well, maybe you should eat breakfast up here, he says. Great, I say with false enthusiasm. But then you should come down for the volleyball game at 11. Randy smiles as if the promise of volleyball would make me feel better. Do you mean it? I really get to leave my room? And with a look up, I've lost my place. The sleep seems to have done me well. I feel energized and eager to let Randy know exactly what I did with my restriction. Okay, well, I know you must be upset about it, but it really was the best thing, Randy says. Right, I say. I'll be down for the volleyball game. See you there, Randy says on his way out. I wait for a while and finally get my breakfast of eggs, French toast, and oatmeal. I'm starved since I slept through dinner and wonder if anyone even brought something up. Around 11, I head down and follow the signs to the gym. I'm not surprised when I enter and find that it is much like the gym in most public schools. Men and women are lined up in 3 rows on either side of the volleyball courts. I watch in amazement as they play volleyball, like I learned from my PE teacher in elementary school. They hit and rotate around the court. They barely move, just hit it if it comes to them. I decide to join in an effort to show that I'm not just the camp pervert. I join in one of the rows that's missing a person and rotate accordingly. I hit the ball a few times, but it comes to the woman next to me much more often. She swings her arms but misses most of the time. She giggles loudly when she does, and our whole side of the net sighs. I wonder if she is single too. Finally, someone hits to her again. She jumps and tries to hit it, but misses yet again. This time, I am anticipating it, and I shift over to save the ball. The ball sails over her head, and I scoop it up from behind her with a nice dig. I watch the ball fly as high and back over the net. Meanwhile, the woman begins to fall backwards. I see her falling back, and can do nothing to stop her. She falls back into me, and I fall with her. We land in a sweaty, naked mess on the wood gym floor. A few guys on our team rush over to help us. God, are you two okay? One guy asked. Yeah, I'm okay. Are you all right? I asked the woman. I think so, she says, as she is lifted from on top of me. I roll over and begin to get up when I notice that my penis is definitely erect. I know there's no hiding it. I'm surrounded by both teams. Not again, a woman shouts. You know what, buddy, you got a I realize it's a voice from the bathroom. I look up and see a muscular, dark-haired man step from the crowd. He is angry. I search for signs of Randy. Maybe he can stop this. Take me to his office. I'm sorry, I say as the voice comes towards me. You're gonna be, he says as he grabs my elbow and pulls me up. The crowd begins to back away from us, surely giving the voice room to kick my ass. I struggle to find something to say. I was just trying to. I realize I have no excuse for myself. I look around at the disgusted faces. I reach down in hopes that my penis has been frightened to flaccidity, but to no avail. Feeling that I have no options, I look for a way out. I spot an exit sign and begin to run for it. I push through the crowd. Wait, screams a voice behind me, but I cannot wait anymore. I have waited for too long, for myself, for Claire, for Mom. And as I run for the door, I realize that my life thus far has been waiting. I push the door open and enter the biting winter air. I continue to push myself forward into that bright winter day with freezing snow beneath my bare feet. So that's the end of the story, so now we can read it again at some point. Okay, I just have a couple more things for you, I promise. So I'll read another poem. This is one that I hate the title of. Try not to complicate myself too much up here, but the title is Dogma, and this is my revised version. Okay, so I tested God until he failed too many times. I have seen the deep, luminescent purple of the northern lights, and know that steel wool splinters can stay under your skin for days. Without him there, I was scared, sneaking down the stairs late for ice cream. The sound of my own slippers on the tiled floor startles me, and I stop every few feet to stare into the darkness. If he wanted me, he would take me. Okay, and then I have one last thing, which is just a writing exercise. It's kind of prosy, that I wrote for I guess it was right after September 11th. Do you remember that? And that was when we were in our intro class. Do you remember September 11th? That was when we were in our intro class, and we actually had class that day. You canceled it and told us to write something about September 11th. And so that was really hard at the time. I'm sure you guys all know. So this is something I wrote. It was an attack on America. I watched a skyscraper full of people collapse, disintegrate. Kids at my little sister's high school ran through the halls crying once they realized the levity of the situation. It was a day of terror. My boyfriend said, "Terror is such a strong word." The 2 men in the grocery store parking lot thought we should declare war to show that we mean business. There were people on those planes. My roommate slept through it all since she didn't have class. My mom had to listen to it at work on the radio. After work, she watched it on TV, and she realized it's a lot different when you see it. Disoriented, I went to karate class where my instructor asked us what we thought America should do while we stretched. The next day I had a meeting with some classmates. We had to write a play, so we discussed topics. No mention of the terror. My group decided the play would be funny if it was about a fat girl. Then, in a moment of actualization, they asked, "Are there any fat people in our class that might get offended?" I don't think so, they all agreed. So, of course, the topic was suitable. They looked to me for approval since I was silent. I remained stuck. I looked down at my notebook and realized I couldn't breathe. Dust from the buildings filled my lungs. I'm on the bottom and they won't find me. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Occasions like this, I learn so much from my students and particularly how to bring humor to even the darkest of situations. That's great. Our next reader this evening is Jared. And you're going to tell us something about yourself when you come up here. But as I know Jared, he is a fine writer, a fine musician, he's a lover of Van Morrison, a follower, traveler of the world, both inwardly and outwardly. And I thought I would introduce him most by reading just one paragraph from some new work of his about traveling in a way, traveling inward. This is from Jared's book. I've been forced to slow down lately because of a broken collarbone. I've had to do everything slow, getting into and out of my car, getting dressed, getting into bed. All these usually done without thought, and now I'm forced to think carefully about which arm to put through my t-shirt sleeve first. My collarbone has been been the best thing to happen to me in a while. I see now, but only a glimpse of the glory in every moment, the grace with every leaf in you, and wide when the branches blown out by an upward breeze. Jerry.
Hello. Wow. Most of my writing's not very serious. So I wasn't really sure as to what to read tonight just because I found out that I was reading about a week ago and I haven't really had time to think about it. Or I guess I've had time, just haven't made time to think about it. Just curious, how much time do we have? What's the time limit? 20, 25 minutes. Okay, well, I guess then I'll start off with a piece that I put in here. And this is the first, well, before I go into all this, I'll tell you a little bit about writing for me. Next. So, all right. Maybe I'll read it. But I was stressing over it hardcore yesterday. I decided to pick up writing as a minor after I took a poetry class, and I'd never written, much less read poetry, but I decided to take a class. I can't remember exactly why I did it. It was probably just one of those things I was wanting to do at the time, and really fell in love with it. And I saw something when I was in that class, and that was that you can draw somebody into a certain place or a situation just by the way you can write. And I saw through different writers that within just a few lines you were somewhere else. Not so much like, oh wow, I imagine that'd be great. It was like you're really on the page. And so that really drew me into that. And, with music and everything, most of my music is just instrumental, desperate for lyrics and solos. And of course, you mentioned Van Morrison. There's others like Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan. Lyricists such as those, it really makes yourself very self-conscious about what you write, because you're comparing yourself to the greats. So anyway, so those were all some of the reasons I decided to write. And then I ended up taking the fiction class with Karen, and I loved it. I wanted to put down some of these bizarre scenarios my friends and I come up with all the time down on paper. And I guess when I first took the class, I wasn't as serious about it as I ended up becoming, I suppose, even though I appear to be too serious about my stuff. I just really started to fall in love with writing altogether. And so, anyway, enough of that. I suppose I was pretty sorry. No, I suppose I'll stand up too. Imagine this is this isn't very long. This is just, so I guess I'll read the whole thing. This was the first piece that I wrote in Karen's class. Not really understanding fiction writing, I rarely ever have read fiction writing before this class. And, so this is, as I look back on it, it's more like a monologue. All right. Hey, you there. You can't sleep here. I have customers, pal. Look, I have to let you stay here for 2 weeks now, and you should know the deal. Now get out of here. That's how I've started my day for the past 2 months now. Call it transition, if you will. I like to see it as a new season. A new season has a much sweeter tone, and that is how I'd like to think of this particular period of my life. My name is Jonathan Buddy. You may remember me from the hit sitcom Who's at the Door, starring myself, Shelley Anderson, and the now devious yet prosperous, once cute and funny kid sister, Gretchen Forrester. That was my life for 6 years. A steady stream of income, fans, ratings, and anything else I wanted. Maybe I should give you a little background on that period of my life. When I was 15 years old, my mother took me and my sister to a talent agency. Naturally, all mothers feel their children are talented in some form or another, so she did the only thing she could to lend a hand in my soon-to-be prosperous career. She pimped me out before the network scouts to see if I was the material they were looking for. Well, her hard work paid off, as you will see, and I got the job, but not the lead role, at least not at first. I was picked up as a stand-in for a scene in a Disney flick you may have heard of, Bacon, the Talking Panda. You know, that scene where Bacon is having a heart-to-heart with Willie about stealing? Well, I was the guy drinking a Dr. Rocker in the background, forcing a laugh as though someone just said something really funny. I improvised a little and decided to take a chance and make a suggestion to the directors. Sterling Musil was directing the show, and I, being at the bottom of the barrel, hesitantly stated my opinion on the atmospheric moment about Bacon and Willie's dilemma. I suggested that the laughter be shown in such a way that portrays the outside world around them as being happy, funny, and most of all honest as a backdrop for the disparity of Willie's state for being a little liar and thief. They didn't buy it, but the costume designer overheard my ideas and approached me after the shoot. Bert Sanchez was his name. He was the soon-to-be writer and director of Who's at the Door. Bert saw something in me the others did not. He saw that I was an observer, not just another wannabe do whatever everybody says, so maybe I'll make it big, stand it. He found a kindred spirit in me that day, one like himself that burned for intellectual, philosophical undertones and the irony of shallow programming for children like Babe and the Talking Man. Immediately we went to work. Our ideas became one and we decided to present a show to the network executives. The show would be called Plato's Backyard. It was intended to be targeted at children between the ages of 4 and 12, containing philosophical principles and easy-to-understand format for toddlers. Why would we see such promise in Plato's Backyard? Education in our country has been on the decline for the past 20 years, and we feel that as a direct result of programming that our children are being exposed to at an early age. So what's the solution? If you can't beat them, join them, right? That is just what we plan to do. It was for the children, of course. The show never made it past the boardroom. They said there wasn't much promise in a philosophical children's show. I still disagree. The good thing that came out of all this was that Cornelius Bannister, the network executive, needed help on a sitcom that would be entitled Somebody Get the Door. The idea was hokey, but Bert took the job and hired me on the spot. Mr. Bannister's idea for the story was set in rural Idaho in the late 1920s with a family struggling through the Depression, but keeping a positive outlook because of a unified community striving together in one cause. This was the worst idea I'd heard in a long time, but it was work and we were given license to alter if need be. The title was the first thing to go because of its negative overtones. Somebody get the door! It comes off as a pissed off, out of work father who is on the verge of homicide wanting someone to answer the stupid door. We decided it would be best to make the show a bit more mysterious, calling it Who's at the Door? This helped with writing scripts and developing characters and other such necessities to formulate the desired atmosphere that Cornelius wanted. Well, to say the least, the show was a big hit. Who would have thought that the McSmith family of rural Idaho would make such an impact on American media? I certainly didn't. In fact, I was expecting cancellation after one season. 6 seasons later, I stood corrected. We gave it our all, Bert and I. Shelley was a great help and had real promise. As for little Gretchen, well, she was a problem from the start. Hey, Bert, I think Gretchen needs more airtime. Kids make ratings, pal. Pull her from the background and put her up front with Johnny. These 26 words were the words that would be the beginning of the end for me. Put her up front with Johnny. Just because he was the network exec doesn't mean that he knew anything about script writing, talent, proper character placement, scene building, overacting, underacting, actor placement. I mean, this guy was just another cash hog. He didn't care about the art, the form, and the time put into Who's at the Door. He was out for one thing, and one thing only: ratings. Gretchen Forrester was 12 years old when she started the show. Her original place was at the quiet, optimistic encourager, apple of her daddy's eye character, which we soon found was not the case for long. This theory was one that I have hard evidence for, and that is this little Gretchen Forrester had every intention of being the lead role and using Who's at the Door as her platform for success. Well, the network gets what the network wants, and they wanted Gretchen front and center. My character, Brendan, started off as a hard-working teenager who laughed a lot and helped keep the family together in tough times. He was great and a positive influence on the other neighborhood kids. As you might have seen in the episode 2 Stalks of Corn this week, I think I'm fast. Brendan knew that his family was more important than himself, and even his father, who had to work day and night just to bring home 2 stalks of corn and needed all the energy he could get. Brendan, being the kid he was, told his family he was going on a fast, so it worked out perfect. And there would be enough corn for the rest of the family. Think little Gretchen would have fasted for the sake of her family's nutritional needs? I think not. I don't think selflessness was a part of her character on or off the stage. From the 2nd season till the end of the series, she was after my stage. Sure, she was cute, funny, stupid sitcom she was on. But that gave the network no right to kick old Brendan to the curb. I had promise, skill, creativity, and insight to the finer things of film. She was just another teen beat candidate. Pretty face, no personality, anger at makeup crew, stage stealing, co-worker destroying, now incredibly successful lead actress, Grammy Award winning. You know what? It's all because of Who's at the Door. That's right. The show that Bert Sanchez and I labored over for 7 years. We were the brains behind that project. You remember that episode, Pa Got a Job? Remember when Brendan falls off the barn because he was so excited about the news? I choreographed all of that and did my own stunts. Whoever heard of a stuntman on a sitcom? I was the first. I was that award-winning sigh of relief when Ma was found after she was missing 4 days because she'd been bit by a rabid chicken. It took 231 takes before we got it right. Anyway, I'm sure you don't want to hear about all that. The most important thing is where I am right now, and that is eating lunch. baker on 32nd Street was kind enough to save me some sweet rolls of pineapple. He was a big fan of mine at one point, I think. So he says. Just the other day, a lady walked up to me and asked me for an autograph. Then she was kind enough to buy me a Happy Meal. I realized that in 6 years of Who's at the Door, I learned how to think positive in the worst conditions. It's like when Brendan and Greta got into a shouting match over who would clean the outhouse. Brendan lost, and though he was angry at first, he found the good in all of it. He found that his sister's self-esteem was boosted as a result of that very incident, which drew her one day closer to winning the battle against depression, ironically, in the midst of a depression. So I found myself here, living a life in the subculture of America. I once had it all, depicting a family with no steady income, no guaranteed dinner, really no hope for anything. All they had was each other, and they had everything. They were far richer than I could ever be. Here you go, Johnny. I had some leftover bagels from this morning. You can have them. Thanks, Mr. Prolter. You see, that's what I'm talking about, community. People helping each other in time of need, just like the McSmith family. Ma, Paul, Brendan, Sarah, even Gretchen in season 1. I mean, that story's ridiculous. I haven't read that in 2 months. How much time do I have up here? I don't know. How long did that take? I just really feel like that went on forever. How about y'all? Did it go on forever? Huh?
It's just not like a phone.
Okay. So I got a little bit more? Okay. Well, I suppose I'll read a poem. Yeah. This is one of the poems that I wrote for our advanced poetry class. Poetry and fiction writing would be a very new thing for me altogether. So this one is, there seems to be a theme, I guess, when you're writing throughout the class. And unconsciously or subconsciously, I seem to have this affliction or fixation with elderly folks. And I didn't realize it. I just thought every all of mine was bent towards that direction. I really started to see a pattern after a while, turning in this work. And the two people who really gave me a hard time about that were Anna Erickson and Alex Quinlan, neither of whom are here tonight. So this, doesn't, unless you know that. Even if you do know, it's wrong. So anyway, I'm going to read this one. It's called On the Anniversary of Your Passing, for Anna Erickson and Alex Quinlan. Standing still in the doorway of our bedroom for only a second, it seemed, like an hour in and out of memories. You asleep in the burgundy lazy boy, waking early in the morning, radiating like the sun, breaking through the Venetian blinds, giving light to the day. Watching you tiptoe across the dew-wet lawn from the kitchen window, amazed that after 50 years you were still so young. I can still hear your keys fall on the kitchen table, stairs creak as you come to lay your tired body next to mine. I guess I'll finish up. I know what I'll do. Okay, I'm going to read a piece from the memoir. And then I'm going to come on in. I'm going to read a piece from my memoir, just the first couple of paragraphs. And then I'm going to read what I wrote yesterday. Yeah, that's because I think the two films go together. Maybe if my memory serves me correctly. My father joined the Army when I was 2 years old. We were a total of 8 times in the 16-year period that I lived at home. I could and have tried to go into detail about each place we lived, but I soon realized this is an exhausting task for both you and I. Where's the real story? I asked myself as I'm typing this. When I look back at my life, I realize that I have many stories to tell, many memories to share. What is all that if you don't know the one whom I speak of? If I don't know the one whom I speak of? I want to know the person that experienced all these stories and memories. I lost touch with them somewhere 12 years ago. This all occurred to me 2 years ago in the basement of my parents' home in Würzburg, Germany. I was sitting in my father's recliner when I noticed our old photo albums were laying out next to the television. I picked up the photo album of me as a baby. I can only speak for myself on such an experience, and that it was wonderful and heartbreaking all at the same time. I had not seen those pictures in years, and looking at them then was far more impacting than it had been in previous times. There they were, my parents. I was 22 years old, the same age as my mother when she held me for the first time after 20-some hours of labor. My father, who was not yet fully bald, but the inevitable only a year or so around the corner, stood next to her, an exhausted young mother, and me asleep in her arms. The next few pages were of me. Our lives were intertwined with one another. These pictures were foreign to me. I didn't remember any of them. As I thumbed through the rest of the album, we got older, and my sister came along. I remember these swimming lessons, first grade, and snorkeling at Shark's Cove. These were memories, but more vague. I swear I could have wept right there. No one was there with me. Folks were upstairs. My eyes filled up with tears as I finished looking through that album, and I could not comprehend my life, the life that I felt so far removed from. I didn't cry because it was heartbroken. I cried because I felt that all those memories, like so many that came after, were stored away, deep in my mind, and in places of my heart that had grown dim and left alone. I didn't know the smiling 6-year-old at Bella's Beach in Hawaii, nor did I know that dirty kid who played war every day after school with the neighborhood kids. He was a stranger to me, someone else's son. I used to cry every day for the first week of school whenever we moved somewhere new. I cried because I was scared to death about meeting new people and being the new kid. I was the new kid last year, I would think to myself as I sat there sulking over a bowl of soggy cereal. After a week, I had made friends and school was no big deal. I had learned not to cry by the time I switched schools again. This time I was going into 6th grade. Crying was no longer part of my school year, and as the years went on, it seemed to fade almost completely from my life. I learned to suppress pain in my life. Wherever I went, I made best friends. And it was a matter of years, sometimes months, before I left for a new home. There I would meet new people, and soon I would have new best friends, all to leave them in a year or two, repeat the same course of action. As I sat in my father's recliner and I looked through those albums, all this started to make sense. I had lived that way for 18 years, detaching myself and moving on. Even when I left home, I still lived that way. I never stopped going. I was running from the experience of life, always feeling rushed to get one thing over with and then on to the next. I was in 4 different elementary schools, 2 different middle schools, and 3 different high schools. After my sophomore year of college, I left and moved 3 times before returning to school. There. I was just wondering where it went. Before returning to school almost 2 years later. I have moved twice in less than 2 years while I've been back in school. My life is a constant river that never seems to still. I was looking for an ocean to dump out into or a bank to wash up on for 20 years, but only catching a glimpse of the shore with the current on my way downstream. So who am I? Where am I? In the grand scheme of things, I'm hidden behind the facade of places and personalities that I've met along the way. And that's what I'm going to read from that piece as it goes on and on and on. And this, I'm going to wrap this up. I feel like I've been up here for an hour. All right, and this is something I wrote just the other day. We had a travel piece due, and I had one already typed out for the most part. Reread it, hated it, trashed it on the same day that it was due, and tried to write another one real fast. And in the middle of that, I found myself really getting anxious and freaking out, and so I decided to write about that a little bit. So this is my travel piece. This is real short. I'll read it real fast. I see now that traveling from one day to the next is far more interesting than traveling out of town. It is more often than not that I find myself bored with the day-to-day activity and hoping someday in the near future to get out of it. This morning I woke at 9 a.m. The weather these past few days has been incredible. The newness of spring breaking through my bedroom window, waking me before the alarm. Most mornings aren't like this. Most mornings begin in anxiety, mostly over schoolwork, and constantly feeling like there's some unfinished task waiting to join you at breakfast. It was in your dream last night, the kid chasing you down a dirt road in a strange town, and now he's there looking over a bowl of cereal as you try to have one moment of peace. This is the day-to-day routine. From the table to the shower to the bedroom, for me they are all moments needing to be conquered, needing to be over, so that I can move on to the next, and so on and so on. This is no way to live, no time to enjoy the present moment. Simplicity of toast or the magnificence of a banana when examined closely instead of seeing it as one more thing to fuel my body. It seems that life is constant, and I'm constantly trying to avoid it. I don't understand why that is. There is so much taking place every second of the day, and somehow I seem to miss it. Yesterday is in the past, yes. I seem to be there quite often, lurking around in these dark corridors, examining recent events and trying to make sense of them all. Impossible, I think to myself. If I stop for 1 second to acknowledge the here and the now, the effects are phenomenal. It is now 9:15 a.m. Wes has already left for work, and John is still asleep in his room. Walking from my room past the living room, there is Braxton, the dog, asleep on the couch, a habit we tried to break her from, but we gave up a month ago. Our kitchen is welcoming. The window lets in the sun. lighting up the table covered in bills, one mango in a vase with a dying tulip. Our countertops coffee stained and covered with breadcrumbs. I've never taken the time before now to notice the way we have aligned our kitchen. Each detail is a reflection of our personalities. All the appliances are set together on one side of the sink. Pots and pans are unworthily under the microwave, and what stands out the most is the obnoxious yard-sized trash can in the corner. I find that I miss so much traveling from my room to the kitchen, from the kitchen to John's room, and back to the kitchen. This morning, Braxy laid across the couch, nothing out of the ordinary. She just laid there, sleeping. The window was open, letting in a breeze, and I stopped just to see something I always see, but have never noticed. Her breathing, the breeze moving through the house, the sound of the birds outside, the car driving by. It was all so new in that moment. These are usually just background noises filling in more important tasks at hand, getting things done, constantly on the go. I've been forced to slow down lately because of a broken collarbone. I have to do everything slow, getting into and out of my car, getting dressed, and getting into bed. All these usually done without a thought, and now I'm forced to think carefully about which arm to put through my t-shirt sleeve first. My collarbone has been the best thing to happen to me in a while. I see now, but only a glimpse of the glory in every moment, the grace with every leaf anew and alive on the branches blown about by an upward breeze. I travel to and from my house to school every day. I take the same route of my neighbor's neighborhood past the Board of Education and the Dixie auction, turn right at the stop sign and left at the light. It is a pattern, never changing. But this morning it occurred to me that every day is unique unto itself. The dew on the ground is not the same as it was yesterday. The clouds in the sky bear no semblance to the clouds the day before. The breeze blowing through my window is not the same as it was yesterday. In essence, my drive to school is a new trip every day. I'm exhausted. That's it.
I'd like to introduce our third reader by reading something he sent me yesterday. This is almost like a tiny essay in its own right called Drinking Ink by Patrick Roots. I write to unlock whatever it is I have to say, and the writing justifies the dialogue I hold with myself. I write to whistle hello. I write to be told goodbye. I write for no reason at all. I write to entertain and to be entertained. I want to see if a thought can float down the stream toward eternity. I write to create, to be godlike. I write because I cannot sing. I write when words aren't enough, like a glass slipper in a quarter to one. I write because words have saved me, but my own words never drive that ambulance. The giant pens of the past, Luther nailed to the church door, King Lear setting the telescope inward, Adrian diving in the sunken ship, Frost stopping by fire and ice to take a peek, O'Brien bringing Battlefield to my bookshelf, Olds bragging about trying to take my language away, Charles Wright saying, just sit there. These great pens tell me I'm not alone. There are others like me, and that connection intertwined through centuries, genders, and countries with dye and papyrus reassure me, like a kiss, that I can be loved. From their words, I am loved, but my words do not yet have their love. My words aren't allowed to play with their words. My infant language is bullied and swirled by those published brutes, but is only my words being fused, not me. I give the words life and then must step back to watch them grow, mature, and develop. When my words are old enough, they will be loved too, and they will love others. But I will still need words, not my own, to bring me life. I write to drink the ink of salvation. Patrick Goods.
All right, I'm going to read one short story called The Falls. Before I do that, I promised myself I was just going to read and that would be it. But like Jared, I like to do a lot of different things and go on many different paths all at the same time. So I want to take 2 seconds to tell a little bit about how I started writing really quickly. I remember in 7th grade wanting to write a short story and sitting in my grandmother's big recliner with a notebook and trying to write this story. And it was some long ranting and rambling about a painting that 8 people that stayed in the bed and breakfast in the bedroom where the painting was. I don't really know, but even in 7th grade, there was something in me that wanted to write. However, all through my formative years, that writing was pushed away by mainly athletics, and much like the character that Karen started off talking about, that was the first short story I wrote for a class, and the plot was there was a football jock that was secretly playing in an orchestra. He didn't know if he wanted to be a football star or in the orchestra. And I thought I was being as far away from myself as I could possibly be, when in reality I was writing about myself. I remember my freshman year, I kind of wish Dr. Meek was here because I sat in her office first semester, freshman year, new to Barry, begging to be led in the advanced writing workshop with the writer in residence 4 years ago, whoever that was. I don't even know now. And she told me that that's ridiculous. You need to take some English classes here before you start creative writing. In a couple years you'll be able to do that. Thankfully, Dr. McElmurray came, and 2 years later, as a sophomore at Barry, I was able to finally be trained to write, and it's been a wonderful experience, and I've gotten to take myself so many places that I didn't know I could go. So with that being said, I'm going to begin to read The Falls, and I'm just going to do this one short story. The Falls. Ed was crazy in a great way. We had hiked up the Cohutta Falls, where a 20-foot drop ended in a sandy beach. My friends were perched, ready to dive. I was just perched, lost, watching the river be born. I saw it grab droplets from runoff ditches, steal water beads from grass blades, and call like sirens water into its drift. The waters pooled and grew as they gnawed through the valley of trees below our lookout. Weeping willows, simple cherry trees, and oaks all drank deep from the river's cool waters. This river gave life. I felt the sweat drop from my temple and sacrifice itself into the current. It was swept along downstream, past the bridge to where a fisherman would probably flick his fly into the river, into my very drop of sweat. As that jujube fly pranced across the stained river, a rainbow trout, wet and residing, might just bite the hook, be reeled in, and later be cooked. Dinner for a fisherman seasoned with my salty little sweat bead, which started at the top of these falls. The valley of life was being birthed at my feet, where cool water ran over my boots and splashed down towards the theoretical fisherman below. Ed's jumping! His boots splashed by, splashed in the life, and leapt into air. Down, down, flipping twice in the 20-foot fall. He flew. It was angelic. Ed was an angel. He didn't have wings, but he sculpted souls. His jumping first let us borrow strength. We were scared, but Ed shaped our fear into desire, and the river gave our desire life. The trout under the bridge must have felt Ed's splash. The river beckoned his fall. "All right, Ed, quit playing," someone shouted. I can't remember who now. "Guys, where is he? Do you see him? Is that blood? We've got to get down there. Don't jump!" Each pebble was so hard to scale on the way down. Every boulder seemed to roll away. The cliff said no, and his pulse had floated away when we reached the water. Oh God, what just happened? He jumped, that's what happened. The CPR, someone? No one knows how? Guys, what if they call it a suicide? And then Amy, and Ben. Who's going to tell her? Who's going to tell Ben that he doesn't have a father? He's dead. I mean, he's really dead. Well, should we carry him out? You're not supposed to move a neck injury, but he's dead. It's not going to matter. Oh God, he's dead. I mean, he's really dead. Maybe we should get a ranger so they know everything. I mean, they need to see everything when someone dies, right? I'll start downstream. I'll send back help. They say the soul leaves the body in that last breath. Ed's soul was then floating in the river, and I was so scared that I might step near it, so near it my pants might soak it up. Ed would never get to heaven because his soul was stuck in my pants. I mean, that could have happened, right? But as I ran by the willows and the weeping cherries, I just couldn't step on his soul. When I got close to the covered bridge, I saw a man flicking a fly line across chest-deep water. He saw me in the distance and initiated a foreign friendship by bragging about his fish. He held up his wet trout and yelled, "I got this butte an hour ago. She'll make a fine dinner." "His soul's in the river," I said. "Help." Amy didn't cry when I told her that her Ed was gone. She stood in the doorway, staring at the plain beige siding of the hallway in front of her. Her eyes just held the tears, Sweet tears of a lover, a friend, a wife. It's a better place, she said. He's in heaven. She was looking at the blank wall behind me when their baby began crying. I think she was fixing to invite me in. Ed and Amy had just bought their first living room suite, and she loved to invite people in to sit on their rich burgundy leather and talk. We would have talked, too. We needed to talk. She would have told me about the day she met Ed. We always laughed about it. Flying to San Francisco, Amy went to meet her aunt. Ed, I, and friends were just going. It was Ed's idea. The stewardess gave Ed a free upgrade to business class. He always carried an ace aura everywhere. His seat was next to her, and they found out they lived on the same street during grade school. But since he was a little older, they never knew each other. Somehow on that plane, they talked about her 7th birthday party. Ed and some of the older boys had apparently seen the new parked cars and the strange, innocent girls. He told her how they filled a bucket with water balloons. Amy had no idea that there were assassins waiting to soak her 7-year-old friends, and all of their dresses, bows, and shoes. Amy's dad caught the boys sneaking through an azalea in the backyard, and he sent the troublemakers home crying. Amy laughed, imagining her dad lobbing a balloon or two just for kicks. Actually, Ed probably didn't need a trump card, because he must have signed a contract with God to write his own destiny. How else could one man go from roasted peanuts to diamond rings? Just 8 months after the flight, Ed crossed that never-penetrated azalea-fenced backyard in a forgotten neighborhood to ask for Amy's father's blessing. Ed truly cut the story out perfectly. She would have loved to cherish those stories with me, but their baby cried, and the door clicked behind me. I stood for a second, listening through the wall to her hushing their baby, or maybe Benjamin was trying to ease her tears. Leaving, I couldn't help staring at the heart-shaped piece of carved cherry nailed to the door. Ed had recently engraved the phrase, Ed, Amy, Ben, and love live here. Back at home, I alone cherished our memories, even though I couldn't understand why my photos couldn't give life. The top photo, though close, wasn't vibrant enough to respire. It was us as college freshmen. I sported that ugly, once popular butt-cut hairdo. My growing brown hair parted right down the middle, and it grew long, too long. I didn't really know any guys on our hall, but I saw Ed bringing girls into his room. He'd stroll in with some girl at 3 in the morning, and I knew he was to be befriended. But I almost lost our friendship by calling him Ted that first week. I thought he would hate me for confusing his name, but I swore he had introduced himself as Ted. Later, we could laugh about the second Thursday of college when he said to me, "My name's Ed, not Ted. Get it right, or I'll punch you in the face." "Hey, I'm pledging Chi Phi. You want to come?" The picture of my butt cut was taken right before our initiation. Ed was the only one smiling. I still had that bowl cut in the next photo. We went to Vail, Colorado to ski through the break. Chi Phi rented all of Crag Lodge for the winter break. We thrived that week as Ed led the charge down the slopes. Atop a black diamond where we took this picture, Ed and I, hidden by our ski bibs and sunglasses, looked almost alike. Ed always scoffed at the triteness of taking snapshots, but he actually wanted to pose for this one. Ed had liked the way the light fell across the slopes that morning. I didn't notice anything particular, but the picture, his picture, was beautiful, a frozen portrait of us. Powder, fresh and deep, had fallen all week, made skiing like flying, and Ed graced the slopes. He flew through moguls and made halos in the long curving bowls. Ed was offered a job as a ski instructor for the lodge, so instead of flying back with us, he stayed to fly down the slopes and watch the sun sparkle on crystal snowflakes at dawn. His infinite ace never wore thin. He just asked if we would mail him clothes so he could stay till May. There was another snapshot. In this one, I had neatly trimmed hair. It was 3 years later in a picture I really didn't want to find. Tuxedo, altar, priest, and Ed beaming with Amy's gentle glory. I was next to him and amazed by his powerful, tender passion. Normally, people remember the ferns, the candles, or the anxious, toddling flower girl at a wedding. But everyone said that Ed, hands calmly, expectantly clasped together, was beautiful as he stood waiting for his princess. Of course, once the harvest began and Amy breathed towards the altar, even Ed was outshone by Amy's glowing veil. The preacher on our other side said that he was jealous of their young love as she floated down the aisle. But that had all become just a picture. because their marriage, Ed, had just floated away down the river. I closed the album and laid flat back in a hard bed, watching the silver metallic fan blades chase each other around and around and around. I watched them chase until our town paper thumped the front door a little after sunrise. Ed was on the front page, his picture engulfed the top left corner panel. Edward Gallant, Cahutta victim. The paper said that the coroner's official report was that he drowned, but he drowned because his back broke on a rock. He couldn't kick or paddle or scream. He just floated, unconscious and breathing in water while we watched and scurried. Died, leaving his lovely wife Amy Gallant and 7-month baby Benjamin Edward Gallant behind. I put the paper down, brewed my morning coffee, and ironed my shirt for work. On my drive to the city, I saw the sign for Cahutta Falls that I'd driven by for months before we finally trekked from the highway to the trail to the falls. On that afternoon, when we finally went for the first time, the birds chirped for the entire 4-mile July stroll. It was like Ed was creating perfection again. The sun sparkled through foliage, but loving shadows kept the temperature down as the river bubbled us a song. People were jumping from the falls when we got there. They were still jumping as the sun slid through the trees and tucked itself into bed. Ed had been intertwined with Amy on the beach, so we didn't jump, not then. The rest of us just talked and drank while Ed and Amy tried not to make lovey eyes at each other. In order to swim and to finally jump, we had to come back 2 weeks later with just the guys, the boys and Ed. Ed jumped first. And that first Monday without Ed, an immovable paper pile inhabited my desk at work. After a few hours, my boss, I think, asked what the processing holdup was. I asked him about what the soul does after death. Don't give me that philosophical garbage. You've got work, he said. Yes, sir. Always yes, sir. What would have Ed told his boss? But then Ed didn't have a boss. He worked at home, running his own cabinet-making business. He started fashioning wood his senior year when he had tried filling credit hours with a carpentry class. That last semester, his hands were so splintered. The splinters were his sacrifice for carving, for creating. He liked to make angels and their wings. Those little notched wings that he made were so wonderful. He carved these statues. He would take a gnarled block of wood and cut, scrape, and sculpt until there was a prevalent teardrop on the newly birthed virtuous face. But Ed's wings were probably what caused Chaplain Gregg to ask Ed's class to make a new altar for the church. The project became their final exam, and Ed's mahogany angels that guarded the ends of the altar earned an A, the only one in the class. Ed loved the work, the creation, the sweat, the inspiration, and the tools. He started taking odd and end jobs, contractors' leftovers that finally led to his own woodworking business. He made cabinets, closets, armoires, dressers, anything wooden, and every piece was signed with a small stenciled angel on the underside. A few hours later, my paperwork was still backed up, so just before lunch I went to ask if I could have the next 2 days off for the funeral. My boss stopped working, stopped like a river hitting a dam. Unnatural. He never stops work. Sure, yeah, take off. You should have just called in. Go on home now. We will get everything taken care of. Yes, sir. I got my lunch from my desk and saw that all those papers had been cleared, swept away. When I got home, the metallic spiral of ceiling fan blades was still running above my bed. The blades captivated me more than the murder mystery paperback on the oak nightstand, the bedside table Ed made for me as a housewarming gift, more than the magazines underneath the book, even more than the big screen in the living room. So I watched the fan. I followed its sprinting track for the second night. I, buried in blue sheets and plaid comforter laid in the dark, I looked at the closed bedroom door and the press suit hanging there. Hours later, I watched the red digital numbers flash to 7:31 and heard the alarm resonate off the blades, the doors, and the suit. Getting out of bed was like waking from a long dream, and I knew that when I got out of the shower, the suit would be back in the closet because the dream, the nightmare, would be over. And Ed would be waiting for me at the golf course for our Tuesday morning in July round. But the black suit was the first thing I saw when I returned from my resented shower. Movie funerals weren't like Ed's. It always rains and people wear sunglasses. But while walking towards the church, puffs of white wisps fanned across the slipping summer sky. But the sun was still warm. uncomfortably warm to be wearing a dark suit. Inside, the unair-conditioned church gave no shelter to the discomforts coated in overwhelmingly incensed air. It seemed pure outside the sanctuary. It was even easier in the foyer, where friends gathered amidst the pictures of Ed. Why didn't they display some of my pictures? Why not the one of Ed making a snow angel in veil? The bells sounded, and I filed away from the pictures and into the sanctuary. I sat between Miss Gallen, who couldn't invite me in to talk on the new furniture, and Miss Gallen, who had telephoned while I watched the ceiling fan to ask if I would be composed enough to say a few words, to prelude his father's eulogy. The sermonizer began first, the very preacher, the family friend, that only 2 years ago preached their wedding. He stood in those same black robes to help them share vows while standing on the rich red carpet. That carpet doesn't cushion wedding rings anymore. It cradles coffins. The priest's words were sweet and bitter. I wish Ed could have heard them. Ed, are you getting up for church? Come on, either turn your alarm off or get up. I know it's early, but you always go to church. Ed, get out of bed. Asleep. More than asleep. His body was so still in the coffin. The Reverend spoke words of consolation, words of reconciliation. Tragedy, he said, and then came words. Many more words were all he spoke. Words that did not, could not, Lazarus said from the coffin. Words, now everyone, every tear-stroked one wanted them from me. I could feel the chisel splintering away the hard things inside. The void, I said, the void cannot be filled. I cannot tell of Ed's passion for life, the hope he gave, the love he shared, and the brother he was. Benjamin cried, but God blesses the fatherless. My words became sounds as the wood was carved. Thank you, the father said to me, his cold, calm hand comforted. At least we were filled with the incense in the chapel. The hollow breeze stole even our loss at Ed's graveside. I didn't have emptiness to fill me. There was so much I didn't say about Ed, so much I wanted to say, so much that should have been said. The coffin slowly sank to the ground, and a handful of dirt drifted from my hand and sprinkled with a crash onto Ed's fallen box. I hope the dirt doesn't bury his soul underground. I hope his soul got out of the river too. Whether Amy or his mother chose it, maybe I did. His tombstone had his signature angel stenciled across the top. An unbeknownst angel entertainer was his inscription. While lowering it down, making him fall into his early grave, all I could think was that they engraved tombstones rather quickly. This premature tomb must be against his will. Ed did not soar, did not fly like an angel into his new life the way he should have. He just went, willingly and obediently, into the hole, the grave. Why did God retract from Ed? On the way home, I did the only logical thing. I turned into the trail's gravel parking lot, parked and started walking. The heat's intensity grew and made my feet sweat, dousing sweat, which pooled not only on my feet, but under my arms, on my brow, and down my back as well. The florsome shoes skid-marked across my feet, leaving my toes blistered. So after 3 miles of trail, I untied them and left them sitting by a large oak. The twigs ripped my polyester socks and then dug into my bare feet. The trail was empty. Only the beach, the falls, the trees, the river surrounded me. The reporters and fishermen were away, off doing the things reporters and fishermen do on a Tuesday afternoon in July. They left me alone at the base with the rocks and the splash. The pebbles lying all over the beach were so small, so minute, and they seemed to lead up to the path, that trail we had hunted for 2 days ago. Only days before, not weeks or months or years, we searched through the scrub to find our way up, unknowing that we would so quickly retreat down from our perch. These little rocks offered another invitation to climb, to rise, and I boldly accepted. It only took minutes to peak the pass. I was alone watching the water tumble down, but everything seemed clear that second day. The waterfalls purified instead of fog like before. I could see deeper. I could see down to the very rock that had released Ed's soul, his ace, into the river. He must have jumped so far out to hit it. It was so far away. Most people probably couldn't fly so far. I couldn't. The water ran over my feet. It was cool and refreshed the splinter wounds on the soles of my feet. I wanted to immerse in the soul-filled water, the healing clarity but I don't think Ed's soul could have possibly stayed pooled at this fall's base. His ace must have swept downstream, away from here and away from me. Yet I inched closer to the edge, closer where the current tugs stronger and the water deepens to my knees. My wool suit pants soaked up the river. My pants were wet, cold, and living. The hole where I could safely land was so expansive and so clear. I could even see little fish. If I jumped, I could try to land on one. I imagined being that fish, wet and residing in the stream, when 160 foreign pounds came crashing through the surface and onto my fins. I don't think if I were a fish that my fins could handle the weight. They would break, and I, no longer able to swim, would be sucked away by the current. Unexpected, crushing, debilitating weight come from above. My shirt easily unbuttoned and fluttered down. It was freeing, watching my blue tie sift a path through the air and raft away downstream. My pants, too, slipped off, and the current snatched them over the edge. They tumbled in the waterfall's thundering power, but they soon sneaked out of the churning, and my clothes gently rode to the pebbled beach below. It was like I put them in the wash, and now they came out clean, ready to dry. I and just a pair of baby blue boxers stepped closer to the edge, the platform. The noise of water rushed like lemmings over the edge. Its noise was beautiful and abrasive. All I needed to do was leap like a boy, and I could fly, flutter, flit, but I froze. My naked toes felt the water cascading down. They dangled over the edge, unsupported by the air. My toes were so close to releasing me, but they hung to the rock, the solid rock. I slowly retreated again. I could not fly from this perch, and so the briars and branches guarding the trail slapped and scratched my back as I crawled down. Those inviting pebbles just bowed their head and prayed for my half-naked body as I pined by. On the sandy beach, I saw my trousers on the other side, but I didn't want to swim to them, so I left them in the living water and drove back to my metallic apartment so that I could shower, put on another suit, and go see Ed's parents at the wake.